Hi, welcome to Fiberchats. My name is Irina, and my guest today is Nancy All from Trilogy Yarns. Welcome, Nancy.
Oh, welcome. Thank you.
And we have a little surprise. So at the end of this interview, if you just stay with us, Nancy has a special gift for the viewers of this video. So you really want to stay till the end. Hi, welcome to Fiberchats. Take three.
Take three, like Michael does.
Right. Hi, welcome to Fiberchats. My name is Irina. I'm the host here, and my guest today is Nancy All from Trilogy Yarns. Welcome, Nancy.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
I love having you here.
Thank you.
Well, so I know you have three granddaughters that you've been raising. Do they ever ask themselves, like, where did they go wrong to have the grandmother who is an Instagram influencer and YouTuber? Like, because like normally people would think that somebody younger does these things, but you're doing it as a grandma. Like, do they like, okay, grandma is the YouTuber, grandma is the Instagram celebrity?
I don't think that they even think about it because as a grandma, I'm not cool in their eyes.
I think you're super cool. I think you are the coolest grandma out there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they probably think that, but yeah, they don't. They don't. I don't even think they watch them, to tell you the truth. So, because I'm just their grandma.
I'm sure they're secretly proud.
Oh, well, I hope so. I hope as they get older, they're in their early 20s. And so I hope they do. I hope they do when they get older.
So let's talk about how you got into the whole yarn dyeing business.
Well, I've always been a knitter. I think I started knitting when I was in like 4th grade. So I'm not going to share how many decades ago that was, but that was a few. And later in life, my husband was a general contractor and loved to do tile work. He loved the color aspect. And so he got ill and he said, I think that I want to learn to knit, which just, I was never going to push it on him, but I was over the moon excited. It's like, I always wanted a partner that would knit, because how fun is it to go to a yarn store and have an enabler with you?
Right.
And that's exactly what he was. So we just naturally thought the next step would be to dye yarn. So we dabbled a little bit at that time, and that was probably about 6, 7 years ago. And so we started dabbling with yarn, and oh my gosh, we just had a lot of fun with it. Well, we had to stop. He progressively got sicker, and we couldn't do it anymore. And subsequently he passed away. And I thought, okay, now what? Here I am, a grandmother raising grandchildren, because my daughter had passed a few years before that. And what am I going to do? My income is gone. We were like traveling gypsies when he was alive. We would do high-end art festivals up and down the West Coast. And so I thought, well, I've got to do something, because, these kids like to eat. They like to wear clothes. So I thought, I'm going to start dyeing again. And so that time I totally took a completely different approach to when we had done it. I did a lot of research. I read a lot. I watched a lot. And then I just jumped in. And I always feel that he is there with me. He's influencing me. He's he's there in each skein I dye.
I learned to knit basically, like, I started knitting 4.5 years ago, but my first experience with learning how to knit was my grandma back when I was like 7 or 8. She showed me, like, one summer I was spending with her, and she showed me how to knit, how to purl, like just basic, right? Mm-hmm. And then I haven't knitted for like all those years, and suddenly I got back to it like 4.5 years. I mean, I can't even say got back to it. I just started again four and a
Right.
half years ago. But I feel like every single time I need something, she always crosses my mind, like she's watching over me. So I totally get that sense of like the support of,
Right.
you know.
It's funny. My grandmother's the one that taught me too. And I remember getting together for slideshows. That was way back in the day. And that's what we did on Sundays. And I can still to this day remember the smell of the projector in the dark room and hearing the click, click, click of my grandmother's needles.
Do you remember
And
what she was knitting? What kind of projects was she knitting?
she knit all of us these nice, gorgeous, personalized Christmas stockings, the real big ones. And of course, when she could no longer do it, then I was the obvious one. My mother did a little bit of knitting, but I was the one that took over. So she did a lot of Christmas stockings. I remember she did some of those rag wool sweaters with the big bulky ones with the animal motifs on the back, the zippers up the front. But you know, as far as garments for her, I don't recall her doing garments, but a lot of stockings. And then she was an excellent seamstress. She did wedding gowns and stuff. So, but
Do you remember like some of your first knitting projects?
oh Lordy, yes. Back when I started, the yarns were not anything like they are now. We had an Orlon, and we had another brand called Wind Tuck. And I'm not sure that Red Heart was even around back then. I don't even know. I do remember knitting a sweater. Oh my gosh, I was so happy to do this sweater. And it was, it must have been wool, must have had wool. And it was, of course, a pieced sweater because back then you didn't knit in the round. And it was hideous. It was hideous. You know, the sleeve, it's like what you imagine. The sleeves were really long. It was very scratchy. But I do remember trying to knit sweaters, you know, just jump right in. I probably did some scarves, but I just remember doing sweaters.
Right. Do you like, did you always knit? Were there periods of time when you didn't knit?
There was a period of time where I kind of put it down, probably in my late teens, early 20s. I took a break from it, busy, you know, raising a family, being in school. But I did pick it back up again shortly after that. And I still look back at some of the things that I picked up when I picked it back up again. And yeah, nowhere. Of course, like I say, the yarns were so different. The
Right.
yarns weren't nearly as nice as they are nowadays. And I think yarn makes a big difference in a finished garment. But,
I mean,
and then
definitely.
seriously stuck with it. I'm going to say probably about 20 years ago, maybe 20, 25 years ago. I mean, seriously stuck with it. And that's when I got into knitting socks and garments with nice yarns. I remember once taking a class. I don't know if you remember the Bill Cosby show. This might be a little controversial, but the sweaters that he wore, he always had the really bright sweaters. And I met the gal that knit those sweaters for him. And she had written a book with some of the sweater patterns that he wore. And so I had to do one of those. And it was like this, almost like a Picasso sweater. I mean, it had like Angora lips up here and an eyeball down here. And it was just very abstract. But I think that's when I really, really got into it and was knitting gifts and just, yeah.
When you start knitting something, right? Do you approach it as a comforting thing, or do you want to learn some new techniques, challenge yourself? Like, what's your usual approach to it?
I think it's more of a comforting thing. And if I learn a new technique, that's a bonus.
Right.
But it's a comforting thing. it's something to do, you know, as a knitter, and maybe you noticed that too. It's hard to just sit
Right.
and not have something. I find where I always have a pair of socks in the car on the go. Heaven forbid you get stuck behind a train, you know. So yeah, it's a real comforting. It's just it centers me.
Right. So when you
Yes.
were going through, like, I mean, and obviously you had a lot of very tragic events in your life in the past, like, few years, right? Was knitting sort of bringing you comfort at that time as well?
Um, it it did. When my husband was in the hospital, I knitted a lot. He was in the hospital. He was going through a bone marrow transplant, so he was in the hospital about 4 months, and so the nurses would come in. You know, what are you working on today? What are you making today? But it was a comfort, and I think it was a comfort to him because he could hear the clicking of the needles too.
It's
You know,
almost
I
like
always
some sort of normalcy in the uncomfortable situation, sort of.
right, yeah, yeah. So yeah, knitting brought a lot of.
Right. So when you knit in public, right, is it always a conversation starter? Do people like get interested in
They
what you're doing?
they do. I haven't knit in public too much the last couple of years because I have not been in public much. But yes, I have met other knitters, airports, coffee shops. I know I was getting a pedicure. Well, it was probably about 6 months ago, and I was knitting on a pair of socks. And the gal next to me said, "Oh, I'm a knitter too," and she had a knitting tattoo, so she had to show me her tattoo. Um, it does. Knitting is a great conversation starter, and yeah, you meet great people
Right.
knitting. Yeah.
Well, do you remember your first experiment with the yarn dyeing? How did that go?
I think we burnt the yarn. We at that time were doing it just in the kitchen in the microwave, and I think we set it for so long. So we had a pan of smoking yarn, and let me tell you, it smells like burnt hair. It's got a really. So I do remember. And then when I got serious about it, even when Trilogy Yarns was just getting started, and I would do it in my kitchen, and it every skein is like Christmas to me because you know in your mind what you want to create. Doesn't always work out that way. You know, what you think is going to happen and what happens is totally different. But until you get that skein actually dried and the true colors come out,
You
it's
don't really know what it's going to be.
yeah, it's hard to tell. You know, I when I come up with new colorways, and I have several monthly clubs, and so I'm always creating new colorways. And yeah, so some are oopses, and that you may over dye or sell off as a one of a kind. Yeah.
Have it ever happened to you that you would consider a yarn that you dyed one of those oopses and somebody would absolutely love it?
Hmm. That has happened. That has happened. And then it's like, can you recreate this? And I can get close at times, but lots of times it's hard. I'm really good about writing down recipes because I do a lot of repeats. But yeah, some of the oopses are just, and I have to remember that people like colors that I don't necessarily like. And so that's been a big learning curve too, how to use colors that aren't in my comfort zone that
Right.
other people like.
So when you were starting, like getting more seriously into yarn dyeing, was it difficult to find information on different like dyeing techniques, on tricks and of the trade sort of thing, or was there bountiful information?
There's a lot of information. There's a lot of dyers that put, you know, YouTube videos up. Yeah. So I would see something and I'm thinking, oh, yeah. And I try to be very careful not to copy colors of other dyers. So I try to kind of tweak things a little bit.
So what
Yeah.
inspires you when it comes to colors? Like, where do you get your ideas from?
Sometimes I'll get it from a picture. Sometimes I'll come up with a name. Like oil slick was one of them. And I thought oil slick is a neat name. And so then you try to imagine what an oil slick looks like. And you do that. Other times I'll say, oh, I really like these colors. I want to put them together. Naming yarns, if you don't have a name in mind, can be, that's a real difficult thing sometimes. And I like catchy names. I mean, I have like llamas in drag. I mean, who doesn't want to be, a llama that wants to be an alpaca? And, I have some fun, catchy names. So it's about half and half, really. I'll imagine something or I'll just start throwing colors together.
When you
And
see other dyers yarn, do you get inspired to try new techniques? Do you do you get ideas for the fashionable hues? Like, how do you see, or do you see imperfections in their dyeing?
oh no, I never see imperfections because I don't know that there's any imperfections in dyeing. It's all in the eye of either the dyer or the knitter, what they like. So I never see imperfections. I love to see how other people's yarns dye up and come out.
Right. Talk about marketing of yarns. So you started at that point where you started the company, right? Did you have a marketing plan? Did you have like a marketing idea how you're gonna start advertising?
My background is in medicine. So marketing and business and color theory was a whole different thing for me. And so I think before COVID hit, I was just kind of dabbling, doing it more as a hobby business. And I had picked up a job in our local school system. And so was doing that, and dyeing was just a hobby. But when COVID hit and I was no longer working, I thought, well, obviously the next step is to take it full time. So I did a lot of, I sent out a lot of yarn. I sent out a lot of yarn to podcasters. And now those podcasters and I, we're good friends. We're just like buddies. So yeah, I think, a lot of shipping out. I did a lot of Vogue Knitting Live. I was scheduled to do their show in Bellevue and was canceled. So I did some Vogue. They did the virtual Vogue Knitting Lives. And so I did some of those. And yeah,
Do you like collaborating with designers? Do you
I
like,
do. Yeah.
how does that work for you? Like, do you usually come up with the color and then think what designer would like those colors? Or do you like see the pattern that they have in mind and think what kind of colors will go with that pattern?
Usually I will let the designers pick the colors that they want. Because they have a vision in their eye, what they want. And so I will let them, well, that's not always true. I have worked with designers that have said, I want something in this color palette.
Right.
But most of the time, yeah, I'll let them pick what they want
Do
and
you
do
like
that.
creating kits for designs?
I do like creating kits. I think that I do a lot of sample knitting when I do my shows, and a lot of people will come in and say, I want that. I want that one. So it is nice to put together kits. And I have worked with customers one-on-one, for Stephen West's last shawlography. I worked with customers putting together kits for that and stuff.
Right.
So I do like doing kits.
It's funny, I just test knitted the shawl for a friend of mine, and it's going to be published before this interview, so it's not a top secret any longer.
Uh-huh.
But she basically was collaborating with the yarn dyer. And I was like, okay, like I like to support the yarn dyer. So I was like, I'm going to buy the kit. And I bought the kit, and it was 3 color skeins. And one of the skeins, I wasn't sold on it. I had another skein at home from different dyer that I thought is gonna look much better.
Mm-hmm.
And so I asked the designer, I was like, do you mind if I'll use my own one? But she was sort of like, she didn't outright said no, but she was a little bit hesitant. And I was like, you know what? Let me just do it with this
Right.
specific
Yeah.
kit. I was blown away by how beautiful it was. And I understood that my initial choice would be a wrong choice for it. Like I totally had to take my hat off to the yarn
Right.
dyer for the vision of like those three colors together, because it came
Mm-hmm.
out like absolutely spectacular. Do you sometimes, like when you see people knitting with your yarn, do you ever feel like, oh, I wish I could have advised them on what yarns to combine?
I do, but the same thing when, if they're ordering something, I'm just kind of thinking, oh, this is their choice. But there again, when it's done, it's like, oh my gosh, it's absolutely stunning.
Are you ever surprised by like what colors people combine and it works?
I do. I am, yes, and it does work.
Right.
And I'll do the same thing. Sometimes I'll throw together colors for, like a brioche project or something that you would never put together. And, yarns just, they play together so well, taking a page from Stephen West's book. Yarns that play together.
Right.
So,
Well, talking of Stephen West, so he basically took the color mixing to the whole other level, and he introduced all the like different textures. He'll mix mohair and fingering and speckled and tonals
mhm.
and all the things. Do you think like that inspires you? Do you feel like you trying different yarns and different dyeing techniques because of people like him?
Um, well, I've never thought of it that way, but I think probably I do. Yeah. And you have to stay current with trends. And I mean, he is a trendsetter, if nothing else.
Right.
So yeah, I think
Do you
so.
have like a favorite type of yarn? Do you prefer tonals to speckles?
Do I have a favorite granddaughter? I do have favorites, and I think that whatever my current one is my favorite. Right now, I have introduced a yak base, and right now that is my favorite. I love the way the yak is taking the dye. In fact, I just finished a sweater last night with the yak, so I'm anxious to get it blocked and show it. But yeah, I do have speckling. I went through a really big speckling phase. Now I'm doing more variegateds, but not necessarily tonal. I mean, I always do tonals.
Right.
So yeah, I think what I'm doing at the current time is my favorite.
Do you have a favorite base?
My favorite base next to the yak right now is my merino cashmere nylon.
Oh,
It is super
sounds
soft.
squishy.
Yeah, I have very sensitive skin, so I have to be really careful. So the merino cashmere nylon is it's my favorite.
Do you
It's
always
so
knit
soft.
with your own yarn, or do you use other people's yarn as well?
I do use other people's yarns. In fact, I have a pair of socks right now from Needles at the Ready, Kevin's yarn.
Yeah.
And it's always fun to see how other dyers' yarns knit up. But honestly, most of the time I do use my own yarns because then I can use them as sample garments. I do a lot of trunk shows, and I'm gearing up for 2022. And so I do a lot of trunk shows where it's not feasible for me to be at all of them in person, especially ones all over the United States. So I do feel that I have to knit with my yarn a lot so I can send out garments.
Right. So do you like doing trunk shows?
I love doing trunk shows. I love doing trunk shows for two reasons. If I'm there, I love to meet people. In the past, I would say I was kind of a shy, introverted person, but you get me talking about yarn and talk with other people that, have the same interests. and it's very nice. So I love doing trunk shows because I can meet people. I can see what they're picking out, you know, there again, the color choices. But I also like doing trunk shows where I'm not there because I can get my yarn out.
Right.
Yeah.
Have you ever been unpleasantly surprised when you dye some yarn and you think it's gonna definitely sell, it's gonna be like super popular, and it doesn't?
Yes. Yeah.
How do you deal with that kind of disappointment?
Um, you know, I don't necessarily consider it a disappointment. It was just, I mean, it didn't work out. It didn't work out. And I don't know if it's whether I didn't push the yarn enough, that particular one. But, you know, like there again, like I said, what I like, not everybody else is going to like. So, yeah, you just kind of have to roll with it.
Mm.
And colors that I think, you know, it's funny, colors that I think, well, okay, I'm going to discontinue. I probably have 150 colors in my inventory, which is like way too many. So just when I think, okay, I'm going to pull one, I'll get a big order for it. So it's hard to, you know, it's hard to know what to do,
Right.
what to pull.
When you post pictures of your yarn, is it difficult to take a picture that's gonna show exact color of the yarn?
It is, it is. And, you know, I've got the light box and everything. A photographer is probably really low down on my list of talents. I can save your life. I can knit you a sweater. I can, you know, dye yarn, take a picture. You know, it's, so I do, I take it personal when I take a picture and I post it and somebody orders a skein and says, this isn't exactly like the picture. Things like that, that bothers me because I really want to try to represent what I've done. So yeah, I really could use some practice in photography skills.
Right. I mean, do you have any tips and tricks for other people who try to get into the yarn dyeing business and struggle with their photography?
Just practice. You know, I guess practice, find, you know, try to get an area where the lighting is pretty natural. I just use my iPhone to take pictures with, or my iPad. You know, there's some pretty nice cameras out there and, you know, all that stuff. But I think it's just practice and find what works best as you can do for
Right.
you.
Um, so you started at some point doing YouTube. What was
Yes.
the idea behind it? Like, why did you decide to do that, especially since you're saying you're a shy person?
Yeah. Well, back to when my husband was in the hospital, I discovered YouTube videos. You know, we had to, I live in Spokane, Washington, and we had to go to Seattle for 6 months. So we were over there for 6 months. And so I just started watching YouTube videos and I was addicted to them. I mean, when you're sitting in a hospital room all day and you don't necessarily want the TV on because of disturbing, you know, disturbing the patients and stuff. And I just thought how fun this would be. So before we started our YouTube channel, I wanted to do it. I just kept thinking, I want to do it. I want to do it, but I don't want to do it by myself. I want to have somebody else to you know, bounce back and forth with. And so when we did our first episode, and I don't think I was nervous beforehand. And we recorded our first episode, and I looked at Kathleen, who I record my videos with, and I said, oh my God, that was so fun. When can we do it again? So I think talking to a computer is a whole lot different than getting up and talking to people.
Right.
And, you know, and if you screw up or you drop the F-bomb or something, you know, you just edit it out. So yeah,
So
I
what
like.
did you, when you started the YouTube channel, right? What was the reaction of your fans, of your friends?
Well, I'm sure it was positive. Um, yeah, I think it was all positive.
But was it like instant success?
We started a channel, and at the time, Kathleen worked for a company. I don't know if I can say the name, so I'm not going to. A company where she had to do some YouTube in the past. And so she already had a channel created that had 14,000 subscribers.
Oh,
So
it
we,
was
we kind of jumped on with a lot of subscribers. Now, that's not to say 14,000, we had 14,000 views, because we didn't. So we had to promote the channel again. And it was kind of like starting from scratch.
so when you were doing your videos, right? Did you discuss ahead of time? Did you had it all planned, or did you just let the conversation sort of flow?
Well, we kind of had planned on, the different segments, like everybody, what we'd finished, what we were working on, any dream. But we tried to pull in a few of our own. We had a favorite section, so we would show one of our favorite things for knitting. So we would write notes, but like anybody, you sit down and start talking and you're off tangent right away. We started doing our YouTube videos in person outside. And it was during COVID, but when COVID got really bad, then we now do them Zoom. We have tried to get together to do a few, but we find, because we're both so busy, that it's easy just to do it, get together and do it on Zoom.
Right.
But like I said, yeah, we'll start talking and get off on other subjects.
Do you feel like people get to know you as a person through this podcast because you talk about like things that go on in your life? It's not just knitting.
I do. And when I do trunk shows, they'll come in and they'll go, I came to see Nancy, because I'll promote where I'm going to be. And so, yeah, I do. And I interact a lot with our viewers, either through, chats or through comments on YouTube, and a lot of instant messaging.
Right.
So, yeah, so I have a lot of friends out there. Yeah.
Do you ever get like negative reaction from people? Like, do people criticize something you say or something you show or something? Like, is it all positive?
I call it helpful criticism. We do, any comment, whether it's a good comment or a bad comment, is helpful. So we'll get suggestions from viewers on things they would like. As far as out and out negative comments, I don't think so. We get the thumbs down. Occasionally something may slip that we shouldn't have said.
Right.
So we'll get a thumbs down, but I don't take it personally.
Do you ever
It's
get like creators burnout, like when you know that you have to record another episode and you don't know what to talk to, or you didn't have time to meet? Do you get like stressed out over it?
we do. And in fact, we were talking about that in one of our Zoom, we Zoom with other podcasters. And it's like, sometimes there's a pressure to have finished objects. So we try to Zoom, we try to record a video every 2 weeks. And it's occasionally you don't have, if I'm busy, and right now is a very busy time in the dye studio. The last of the advents will go out this week, and I just hired an employee because I cannot keep up. And so when I'm out in the studio from 7:30 in the morning till like 4:35 at night, and I'm so tired when I come in, the last thing I want to do is pick up my needles. It used to be that I would knit every day. Now I'm finding there may be a day or two here where I don't pick up my needles, but there is a pressure. And it's a self-imposed pressure to have something done, to show that I've completed something. So I'm excited. Our next video, I have 3 finished objects. So, because we just came back from retreat. So I got lots of knitting at our retreat.
What are they?
I have a hat. I have the Musselburgh hat. I have the Volcano Trail owl, which is a Maxim Sear design. And I finished my yak sweater. It's a Jennifer Steingass colorwork sweater. So I finished that. So I'm excited to show those on the podcast. And I cast on a shawl. So lots of knitting this weekend. It was fun to get stuff finished. Yes.
When do you like test knitting for designers? Do you ever do that?
I do like test knitting. I just test knit the Opus shawl by Maxim Sear. I was one of his test knitters. In a prior life, when I left the medical field, before my husband and I called traveling knitting gypsies, I did sample knitting for Norgon and Plymouth yarns. So I did a lot of garment knitting that I saw in magazines for, patterns. And that was fun. That was fun to do sample knitting because you could play with different yarns and stuff. I do like test knitting, but I don't have as much time to do it as I would like.
So like you mentioned that you hired somebody to help you, but before that you were a one-woman show basically. So you have to, it's a whole process. So not only you have to soak the yarn, dye the yarn, dry the yarn, skein the yarn, label the yarn, ship the yarn, all these things, right?
And
how
website
did you manage
support.
that?
I have always been a hard worker, and I would just do it. But things tend to slip. This last summer, I didn't put a garden in. I did very minimal yard work because when you are, running a house, running a yarn, or running a yard, and running a business from home, you have all these different hats on. So yeah, it's tough. And things would tend to, the house isn't as nice as it used to be because I'm busy. But having an employee makes me realize how busy I really was. When it's your own business and you want it to succeed, you just do it. You do it, and you don't, I don't know. I didn't complain because I really, really love what I'm doing. It's not a job. I mean, it's my job, it's my income, but it's not like, oh, I'm going to call in sick today type of a job. It's my happy place. When I get out, I can be having a really bad morning and I get out to the dye studio and I put on some music. I'm in my element. It's just such a passion and I so love what I'm doing that you just do.
Back at that day when you decided to go full force into yarn dyeing, do you have any regrets? Like, would you do anything differently now that you know what the process was and how much involved?
I wish I'd have done it sooner. I just wish I had done it sooner. And I don't regret anything. It took me a long time because I'm not a tech person. So even just doing, I still would like, my website still needs some attention. But no, I don't think I would do anything. I don't think I would do anything different.
Right. How much time do you spend on Instagram? Like, how much time do you spend talking to people there, answering DMs, like answering questions, or is it all happening mostly on your website?
Uh, Mostly on Instagram. I would like to spend more time on Instagram. I think social media is a very important part of a business, and I don't do it as much as I like. Hoping to, now that I have the employee, to free up a little more time to do that. Throughout the day, I'm constantly checking as I'm working, checking for, checking emails, checking, DMs and stuff. I probably, when it comes right down to it, only spend maybe a half an hour a day. But yeah, I would really love to amp that up a bit.
Right.
So that is my goal. After, I keep saying, after Advents, Advents will be shipped by the end of the week. And it's amazing how much time Advent
Well, that was my
making.
next question,
Yeah.
actually, because like it seems like it's a lot of work to
Yeah.
do it. Like, why do Advents? Like, what do you like about doing Advents?
I am a giver, and I love when I get Advents, how much fun it is. So I think Advents are a very important part of knitting nowadays. I think that I just think it is. So I love doing Advents. I do a lot of Advents. I'm gonna as soon as this one is done, I am doing a collaboration with a bag maker for an upcoming Advent. But yeah, with the Christmas Advents, you have to come up with 25 new colorways, and it's a lot of dyeing. I think between my Halloween and my Christmas Advent, I have dyed over 6,000 mini skeins. It's, and then to package them and name them, but it's so much fun. It is, and it's just fun.
Do you knit yourself as your Advents?
Um, I have with one. My last year's Halloween Advent, I did do the habitation throw. And I always hold an Advent back for me, but now I'm not very good at knitting up. Yeah.
So what's your personal stash looks like?
My personal stash is very, very small. I had a very large personal stash, and I went through and took out stuff that I knew I would just, my tastes have changed over the years. And so I took like 3 big tubs to our local knit group, and I said, have at it, take what you want. I had some silks, I had some really nice merinos, I had some gorgeous lace weights, but I knew that I would probably never use it, and it gave me pleasure to gift them to my friends that wanted them, as opposed to having somebody do it after I'm gone.
Right.
So my personal stash is pretty small.
What happens to all the stuff that you knit? Do you sell the finished objects? Do you gift them? Do you keep them? Do you wear them?
I wear a lot of them after I'm done having them as sample garments. I do have quite a few sample garments that I will probably sell at some point, most likely at a fiber festival. I have heard through the grapevine that Vogue is going to be back in Seattle in 2022. And so I will be there because they've already got my money from 2 years ago when I was supposed to be there. And I have a pretty large, I think I have a 10 by 20 booth. So I may take some sample garments that I have knit that and sell them.
Right.
But I do gift some. But otherwise, I'm like every knitter. I have drawers and drawers of shawls and sweaters and socks. I have a sock drawer. I have so many socks that I have now started a sock drawer because there's no way I can wear them. So it's nice to have a gift of, somebody has something coming up. I don't gift a lot of knitting for holidays, but I gift it throughout the year just because,
Right.
here's a just because pair of socks.
That's so lovely. Do you have any tips on how you keep your knitted items?
Um, well, my sweaters, I am a Marie Kondo sweater gal, so they are rolled up in drawers. Um, Shawls the same way. They're kind of, I just roll them up and I have drawers that are dedicated just for that. Now hats kind of will just fly wherever, you know, if they end up on a coat rack or, and we have a lot of hats, but yeah,
Right. You know
I
that.
don't hang my knitted wares. I roll them up and put them in drawers. Yes, so I am going to offer a 25% discount code for any of the viewers that have either tried Trilogy yarns in the past or have not tried Trilogy yarns, they've heard about it and want to try them. And so the code is going to be Fiberchats 25, non-capitalized, and you will enter that on the checkout page. It's good for everything in the shop except my monthly clubs. So any of the colorways, any of my discounted items, yeah. And that'll run for 1 week from when this airs for a week after that. So it'd be a good time to try some Trilogy yarns if you haven't.
That sounds so great. Thank you for doing that.
Yes.
Thank you so much for also being my guest today. I love chatting with you. I love getting to know you, and I can't wait to actually try your yarn. I'm going to be one
Oh,
of those people ordering it.
yes. Well, thank you. Thank you for having me so much. It's been really nice to get to meet you and talk with you.
Thank you.